May 31st. It's one day. The tickets will sell out. Simply visit AlexJonesDallas.com or follow the banners at Infowars.com. I have secured a discount for my listeners when you visit AlexJonesDallas.com. Again, that's AlexJonesDallas.com to secure your tickets to this one-time event, and I'll see you in Dallas.
Coast to coast, direct from Austin. You're listening to the Alex Jones Broadcasting Network.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this original worldwide transmission. It is Sunday, May 4th, 2014. We'll be here for the next 2 hours, as we are every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, thank you for joining us here on the Sunday broadcast. Wow, where to begin? I saw a story on Drudge Report on Friday that really concerned me. I want to talk about some of this in the next segment. CDC confirms first case of MERS virus in America. Health officials say a deadly virus from the Middle East has turned up in the U.S. for the first time. And, of course, earlier in the week, the CDC and the World Health Organization at the UN said the biggest threat medically worldwide now is drug-resistant viruses and bacteria being foremost. And you add the cocktail of antibiotics, all the weird drugs, the stuff that's mutating, the GMO. This is just going to get more and more serious here on out. And the globalists really don't want us to get a lot of these medical treatments and things that are already available. So we're going to be breaking some of that down today. Also, I saw some reports earlier in the week that, the GOP, doesn't want companies to come out with biometric guns so criminals can't kill people or we can't have mass shootings. The issue is Obama wants to ban guns previously made that aren't biometric. And I've got another article I know out there in the printer that would just be really fantastic on that subject. I forgot to get that, so I need that little tidbit. Thank you, gentlemen. And, of course, we covered this a few weeks ago, but it dovetails with the new article on this subject. GOP fears executive order on biometric guns. And, just one little old grandfather wanted to come out with a biometric gun, and the NRA was mean to him. Why? You can't even have a free market here in America. It's just not fair. And they say that the GOP fears it and that it's a terrible thing. So that's all coming up here on the transmission today. We're also going to get into some of the fraudulent employment numbers that are out there that just show how Orwellian everything's gotten. Payroll in the U.S. Rises most since 2012, 203,000, but that's all, and then some, because it's actually a negative number. If you look at the real numbers, we've had a lot of economists on, like Dr. Bunker Roberts and others. It's all people getting cut from 40 to below 30 hours, so Obamacare doesn't kick in, having to get other jobs. So this is pure manipulation. They claim we have a 0.1 growth rate in this country, and that's even with Cook numbers. That is depressionary on every front. And I'm not being negative. We have to admit that if we're ever going to have any chance to turn this around. And then coming up, I told you about this years ago. Now it's being publicly announced. Coming soon, a brain implant to restore memory in the troops. In the troops. Oh, Bob got hurt, but now he's got a brain chip. He's going back into combat. He's not depressed. He's not sad. There's no more problems anymore. That is out of AFP, AP, you name it. The stuff of science fiction now becomes reality. It is all coming up in great detail on the other side of this break. And it's also vitally important for listeners who are tuning in to spread the word about the broadcast. That's how we're reaching more people. That's why I am able to come in here and do hour after hour of radio and TV every day, is because I realize what the stakes are. I realize how serious all of this is. I realize what we're facing as a society, and that we have no future if we don't beat these people. I've gotten in an aggressive resistance mode, and resistance is victory. That's why they tell you, oh, Obamacare is here to stay bipartisanly. No one can stop it, even though it's 80+% negative. It's to make you feel weak. There's also big news on the Benghazi front and the subpoena of Hair Kerry. I'm Alex Jones, your host. Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com are the sites. From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new InfoWars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
To the earth, riches and wisdom. So we have even right there.
What's his name?
This is an emergency transmission from FEMA Region 6 in occupied North America.
There is a war. It's happening now. It will decide the fate of humanity. The time to choose sides has come. We are the resistance. We are the InfoWar. Waging war on corruption, crashing through the lies and disinformation, Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you so much for joining us on this worldwide original transmission. It is Sunday, the 4th day of May, 2014, and we'll be here for the next 2 hours as we are every Sunday. We have the weekday transmission as well from 4 to 6 p.m. right here on stations all over the country. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's look back at the big news, the important news from my perspective, in the last week. Then we have a whistleblower guest joining us in the second hour that is as big as the Snowden situation, as big as the Pentagon Papers that came out back in the 60s. This is really a huge issue. This is really a Daniel Ellsberg or a Snowden-level piece of information you're going to be hearing here, dealing with Benghazi and more. Tell you more about that coming up. Again, ladies and gentlemen, where to start? The anti-gunners have a new way to try to get our guns. It's biometrics. We're going to break down what's really happening on that front coming up. Also, the latest on the Bundy Ranch BLM land grab, now coming to Texas. They want people's private land on both sides of the Red River. Rick Perry says, try to come and take it. Got to hand it to Rick Perry for standing up. The governor, that's good. But it ties into feds consider taking Alaskan tribal land into trust. That's AP. They're now not enough to have 80+% of Alaska. They want more. We're going to be breaking that down coming up. We're also going to get into a really wild story that's not anything unknown to our listeners, but is new news to mainstream media. DARPA and the Pentagon are coming out saying the answer to the troops' depression is brain chips. This is AFP, RT, and AP. Not me. Sure, I told you this 15 years ago. I knew troops were getting brain chips 5 years ago. Not all of them, but they're doing it. They're now rolling it out and going, oh, we've been doing testing for a long time, but now we're rolling out the brain chips. So that is all coming up on the broadcast today. We've also got some interesting news we're going to be getting into, not just on Benghazi, but how that ties into government narcotics trafficking, and a lot more. Also, federal regulators could be empowered to enter your home and inspect your cars and things without warrants. That's all Agenda 21, global corporate fraud through the UN. It's all coming up today. Now, first off, let's get to this story. I first saw this on Friday up at drudgereport.com. It's an AP story. We've got it up on Infowars.com, linked on the Sunday broadcast so folks can see it. CDC confirms first case of MERS virus in America. Health officials say a deadly virus from the Middle East has turned up for the first time in the United States. An American who works as a healthcare worker in Saudi Arabia is hospitalized in Indiana with the MERS virus that kills a large portion of those that get it. Officials said Friday the man was diagnosed with Middle East respiratory syndrome after returning to the U.S. about a week ago. Saudi Arabia has been the center of an outbreak of MERS, which surfaced 2 years ago. At least 400 cases have been reported in more than 100 people. It kills more than 1 in 4. That's super deadly. And more than 100 people have died. The virus has been found in camels. But officials don't know how it's jumped into humans. Well, I've got a good idea. When you've got hundreds of animals that have been zoologically crossed with humans or other animals, and that's been done for pig hearts, for transplant and things, it allows it to jump into humans. That's what the top geneticists have said on this show. It's what the literature says. When you've got hundreds of pharmacological crops with scores, more than dozens, of different plants and animals, including human DNA, put into their DNA, and then virus RNA added, you're looking at cross-species contamination where we can get the diseases that the animals have. In fact, most scientists believe that Ebola, until the last 50 years because of vaccines in Africa, wasn't able to jump into humans, or HIV. This is the type of garbage we're talking about. Airborne Ebola, airborne rabies. We're talking about zombie-level events that the system is talking about. And then you've got GMO. You've got all the feeding antibiotics to the farm animals. All of this is souping up the bacteria and souping up the viruses with the antivirals they've got. Just earlier last week, it was like last Monday, like 7, 8 days ago, the CDC, Center for Disease Control, and the WHO, World Health Organization, not the British rock band, they came out and said the #1 medical threat worldwide, and I agree with them, is superbugs, flesh-eating bacteria, staph and strep and the rest of it. You don't have to tell me that. I talked to medical doctors all over the country. Last winter, I lost my cousin and my uncle. My uncle took care of my cousin. My uncle took care of my cousin, and then he ended up getting it and dying. It was some respiratory thing. The hospital in East Texas was full, turning people away, and so were all the others, and people were dying all over the place. And you know what? It wasn't in the media. It was in a few local stories around the country that there were all these deaths and all these problems, but the establishment didn't want you to know. Oh, and there's some fake H1N1 that's really not even killing anybody, and that the vaccine doubles your chances of getting regular flu. That was a Canadian study, government study. You'll hear all about it because it's a rollout to sell $20 billion of flu shot. But when it's real and it's killing people. Remember a few years ago they had like super flu in vials in a FedEx truck that crashed in Denver and was all over the road, and one drop of it, would have basically given people flu that was killing 90% of people that got it. Made in a lab, just search engine. Governments make super flus in labs. And they claim they're doing it to fight stuff, but if you go back to the H1N1 outbreak in 2000, and was it 8 or 9, if you go back to that, it was in Bloomberg even, that in Eastern European countries, like Czech Republic, one headline was 20 homeless die after being given a flu shot. And it turned out it was a super weasel flu crossed with humans. And so this is the type of mad scientist, crazy land stuff that's going on that is so incredibly important. And we need to understand the threat is not terrorism. Terrorism is hyped up in movies and TV, both fiction and nonfiction, to create the perception that it's happening and at record levels. That's what's going on. Again, I've said this 1,000 times. Vanity Fair wrote an article about it last year. No, it was Esquire. The only reason I know is because I was in that issue of Esquire. Only reason I read it. And they did the same numbers I've done ad nauseum. 200-something deaths from honeybees on average. 200-something deaths from wasps. Similar numbers. It's over 300 deaths a year of deer actually running out in front of cars. Dozens of deaths where deer actually gore people to death. That's not really popularly promoted, but it's true. 4 to 5 deaths a year from great white sharks. Everybody's scared of those. It's just like terrorism. Terrorism is incredible.